Welcome to the deep dive for this week. Don't forget to visit the website at deepdiveau.net. Check out our socials and Patreon page at the Deep Dive AU. Subscribe via your favorite podcast app or like and subscribe at our YouTube page at the Deep Dive AU.
This is the Deep Dive Podcast. And here is your host, Michael Coles.
Lauren McGee is the Chief Learning Officer at Workplace Performance and Wellbeing Institute, a stress resilience and productivity expert guiding high performers to manage their stress and to find balance. At the age of 23, Lauren reached a state of physical and emotional burnout after finishing 2 degrees and entering the world of paramedicine. Lauren currently holds a bachelor degree in exercise science and paramedicine and is furthering her studies with a postgraduate in neuroscience. During her experience with burnout, she delved deeper into the fields of stress management, burnout prevention, and holistic health, finding her way to becoming a yoga and meditation practitioner and teacher as she found these practices were a huge part in saving her health. Now she's a speaker and trainer for WPWI, delivering to corporates and business owners so they can find a balance between being ambitious and driven as well as calm and regulate. She has spoken on stages all over Australia, sharing her story, her knowledge and wisdom. She has run various face-to-face and online workshops to many different industries and organisations, including the Langham on the Gold Coast and the Imperial on the Gold Coast, as well as Strata Management Australia-wide. Lauren is paving the way forward to a different way of climbing the corporate ladder and of running a business and organisation, a way which people can come home regulated and present with loved ones, finding their version of balance within a fast-paced and ever-evolving world. Lauren McGee, welcome to the Deep Dive.
Amazing. Thanks, Michael, for having me.
So what is stress and how does it impact the nervous system?
Yeah, well, stress is a natural thing that occurs in our bodies, and it's there to basically keep us safe. So it comes up within the body when we perceive something as a threat, and then it allows us to be able to move away from that threat. However, obviously in this society, it isn't just running away from a predator anymore. It's getting stuck in traffic, it's maybe having a phone call from a boss or having conflict with a colleague. And we're having so many moments in our day that this stress is now accumulating. So it's sort of a different type of stress than what our body's actually been made for. And so stress is a natural perception in the body, and it starts within the brain, basically, and it sends out a signal to the rest of the nervous system. So the nervous system, is compiled of a few different parts, which I don't want to confuse your listeners too much, but we have the autonomic nervous system, which is, the nervous system that's happening within the body automatically. We don't have to send, a thought to our heart, can you beat now? We don't have to send a thought to our gut, can you digest food now? It's something that's happening underneath the surface without us really having to think too much or do too much to make it happen. This is the autonomic nervous system. So we've got all this connections and wires traveling down from the brain through the spinal cord out to these different organs and parts of the body. And then it splits off into 2 parts. So you have the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system within the autonomic nervous system. And then you have these 2 parts. So picture it like a seesaw, and you have sympathetic on one side and parasympathetic on the other. And basically, these 2 parts of the autonomic nervous system are always kind of occurring. However, one is more active than the other in one time. So if you're, for example, getting ready and slowing down at nighttime, getting ready for bed, then your parasympathetic is more active than your sympathetic. However, if you're training really hard at the gym, your sympathetic is more active than your parasympathetic. So this seesaw is always moving up and down. Now, in society, because a lot of the time, as I spoke about, we have many stressful moments in our day. If we're unaware of the nervous system, what's actually happening within our bodies and underneath the surface, then our sympathetic is going to be active all the time. And then our body and our brain thinks that we're in this fight, flight, freeze mode or this survival state all of the time, and we don't give ourselves a moment to actually rest and recover. So I hope that answers your question, Michael.
Well, in the long way, I think it did. So, how does chronic stress affect the brain structure and function?
So stress, like I said, it can be an acute thing. So if something happens right now, say the fire alarm goes off, then our stress response will occur to keep us safe. Our body will go into this alert state, and we'll go into this acute stage of stress. However, if we're in this high stress state for long periods of time, for more than 6 months, where we're in predominantly a sympathetic state, then we're in a chronic stress state. Okay. Now, when we're in this state, cortisol's being released all the time. Cortisol actually helps us with our circadian rhythm and is very important for our health and for our regulation and for our normal everyday function. So cortisol will be released when you first wake up in the morning, and it will help increase your blood pressure, will get you moving in the morning, and then it will start to drop when you go to bed. So it's following this 24-hour cycle when you're healthy and not overstressed. However, when we're in this chronic stress state, cortisol has been pumped through our body for so long now that the cells that start to actually recognize cortisol, that normally allow it to attach, if that makes sense, and do its thing, it starts to desensitize because it's sick and tired of cortisol keep coming along and going, hello, I'm here, hello, I'm here. So these receptors, they'll stop picking up cortisol. So then cortisol is actually, in our bloodstream at high levels for long periods of time with nothing for it to do, if that makes sense. So it's very similar to diabetes and what happens with insulin in the pancreatic cells and all those sorts of things. So it's a very similar concept with cortisol. So then cortisol now, instead of it actually being a good thing in your body, because it's at this high level, it's breaking down tissue, it's causing inflammation and causing so many other issues within our body, our nervous system and our brain. And you'll start to, have blood pressure issues, have other health issues. It's not good, obviously, for your heart to be under this sort of load and pressure and have cortisol attacking the heart tissue. And then it's also affecting our brain, because if we're in this stress state for a long period of time, it reduces circulation and activation of certain parts of the brain. So when you're in the stress state, straight off the bat, your frontal lobe reduces heavily. I think it reduces around 70 to 80%, because you don't need that rational sense of thinking when you're in a survival state. You need other parts of the brain working. So your amygdala and your hippocampus and all those other parts that need to remember what you would do in that situation and pick up a stressful state and trigger an emotion and trigger action. Those sorts of things are going to be active. So if you're in this stress state for a long period of time, just imagine how that would affect your neurons and your neuroscience makeup of your brain, because certain parts aren't being used and certain parts being overused. So this is when, the neuroplasticity starts to come in, because your brain's going to adapt to what it really needs, because your brain just works in keeping you alive. Yeah.
So what are the different ways in which stress can manifest in the body, specifically in relation to the nervous system?
Manifest within the body. Stress, is it's multifaceted. It's very interesting, and I think textbook it will be quite straightforward. But as I've gone along this journey and delved into different areas, spirituality, stress covers all sorts of different things. So it manifests in the body physically. We hold on to stress in different parts of the body. When you're stressed, maybe you're feeling like your shoulders are really tight. You might get pinching in your neck. That's all to do with the vagus nerve traveling down from your head all the way down to the gut. And your vagus nerve is your, longest nerve in the body. It's your parasympathetic nerve. So that gets activated when you're resting, when you're slowing down. However, if you're not using that nerve because you're in your sympathetic state, then this is when it starts to really create this sense of tension in your neck, and you get this pinching and this discomfort within your shoulders. So that's one sort of thing that can happen when you're in this stress state and within the nervous system. And then holding on to stress and how it manifests in the body, we can hold it in different parts of the body depending on the emotion as well. So if stress is caused by anger, you might hold that in your liver, for example. Or if stress is caused by fear, that could manifest in a different organ as well. I've done my yoga teaching teacher training, so we learn a lot about Chinese medicine and how different emotions affect different organs. And if you're not releasing stress in a healthy way, it's just going to create like a sense of, imagine a river, and it's normally flowing and traveling nicely, and it's clear water. And then all of a sudden we get a storm, and all these trees are coming down on this river. And now the water can no longer travel down towards the ocean. And so now the water's just circulating, getting stagnant and getting murky. Now, this is what happens when we manifest and hold on to stress in certain parts of the body. It's just turning into this murky, dark energy, and it's going to only manifest in disease and chronic health issues for sure.
And believe it or not, I know stress can impact a lot of people and stuff like that, especially when it's actually sort of manifest for a fairly long time. So, how, on that question, can stress lead to long-term changes in brain chemistry or neuroplasticity in a sense?
Yes, so I was sort of touching on this a little bit before, and I am studying my postgraduate in neuroscience. That's probably why you're hitting me with all these neuroscience questions. And I'm so nerdy. I love, going into this sort of thing. And we're speaking, we're learning a little bit, about the neuroplasticity with all sorts of different things. I know this podcast is about neurodivergency, for example, and you sort of touch on that, and we've spoken about this obviously on my podcast, having you on there, and that also creates neuroplasticity and changes within the brain. So sort of anything that you go through will always create neuroplasticity within the brain because your brain's constantly adapting. So neuroplasticity is basically your brain's way of diverting, its energy and its function where it feels like it needs to go, or if there's a trauma or an injury or something that's happened in your life, naturally it will work to sort of re-divert, if that makes sense. So if a part of the brain's no longer working, it will go, okay, that's down, that area is down, it's not working anymore. However, we're going to still need that function. We still need the ability to be able to do whatever that part of the brain does. So let's create a bit of a pathway and divert that into a different part of the brain. So within, different types of mental health issues like anxiety, depression, there's so many things going on, talking about serotonin levels. And I know one of your questions is about gut health, so we'll go into that soon. And serotonin is very important for mood and function and feelings of happiness and regulating your nervous system, feeling calm, your digestion. However, if your gut health isn't right, or you've got something happening within your nervous system or your body that's not producing serotonin or not letting it attach to its receptors properly, then you're not going to get that response from the hormone, even though maybe you're secreting it. There's so many things, and that can be a reason why people have anxiety or depression, because there could be something happening with their serotonin or the serotonin receptors. There could be something happening with dopamine or the circuit within the brain that produces dopamine. So there's heaps of different reasons, and there could be causes for that. Like I said, trauma, environment, the fact that your brain's in fight or flight, and it goes, okay, well, I don't need that anymore, and I'm going to just focus on what I do need right now. So then this neuroplasticity starts to occur as we adapt. Does that sort of answer your question?
Sort of, but I'm actually sort of going on to the next one. But how does actually stress contribute to disorders such as anxiety and depression?
We sort of touched on that. So how does stress cause it, did you say?
Yes.
So stress is, like I said, it's the sympathetic, okay? So it's like you're just constantly pumping energy around the body. It's a very hot energy. It's a fast energy. It's, your nervous system is basically just very hyperactive. It's constantly firing signals. It's just in this fight flight mode, right? So if we're in this state What was your question again? I don't know. I get
Okay,
diverted.
so basically, what does chronic stress contribute to the development of neurological disorders such as anxiety and
Anxiety,
depression?
depression. Yes, that's where I was going. Anxiety. So say, anxious people that feel anxious or suffer from anxiety, they'll have moments where their brain and their nervous system just sort of take over, and they might have panic attacks, anxiety attacks, because their nervous system is really jacked up. So they need to calm down and bring it into their parasympathetic nervous system, if that makes sense. So high stress, because we're already in that heightened state, it won't take us long to sort of push us over the edge to then get us over into maybe a state of anxiety, because we're already so heightened and we're already in that heightened state. Does that make sense? So then something else might happen in your life or push you over the edge, and you get into this anxious state because you're already heightened and your nervous system's already firing really fast. So anxiety is where your heart rate's beating really fast, you're feeling nauseous, your thoughts are racing. So it's all about getting back into your body, slowing down, tapping into the parasympathetic. Maybe you haven't activated that one for a while. Deep breathing, that will activate your parasympathetic, because you've got that vagus nerve that travels down to your gut, travels down to your lungs. So activating that through deep breathing. Anxiety is also a lot of mindset stuff, because you're thinking about the future all the time. So when you're stressed, you're thinking about, oh my gosh, I need to get all this work done. I can't get all this work done. Or, oh, what if I get in trouble at work? It's what ifs, and it's future projection. So we're always thinking about the future and the worry of what happens if this happens, or am I going to lose my job, or how am I going to pay for XYZ? So it's always thinking about the future. So how can we come back to the present moment? How can we come back into our bodies, calm our nervous system down, feel safe? Anxiety and stress is about not feeling safe. It's about feeling a sense of fear. So tapping into feelings of gratitude and fulfillment. How can we, even though we're stressed, even though we're anxious, maybe we're suffering from depression, how can we feel grateful for something today? That will help us feel present and actually start to release these endorphins and beautiful hormones that maybe we haven't released for a while, because we've been in this state for a long period of time. So that's also where sometimes depression can occur later down the track, is if we're in the stress state for a long period of time, we're feeling fatigued, we're feeling burnt out. I mean, how can you feel truly happy and thriving when you're exhausted? When you're struggling to get out of bed, when maybe you're not enjoying your life, you're not enjoying your work, you're feeling so overwhelmed right now, you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Of course, that's going to manifest into some sort of mental health problem if we don't address or do something about it now. And that's where sort of depression will occur, and we're not maybe using parts of the brain that releases the dopamine. We're maybe not looking after our health so much, because when your stress response, your digestive system pretty much turns off. That's why eating needs to be happening and occurring in a parasympathetic state, because if we're eating and forcing ourselves to eat when we're in this stress state, sympathetic state, our gut is pretty much shut. So we're just forcing food down a closed hose, if that makes sense, because our digestive system's only truly working when we're relaxed. So once we start to actually tap into this parasympathetic, everything else will start to move and regulate. Your serotonin will go up, your dopamine will go up. Your serotonin is 90% or 95% is released by your gut microbiome. So of course, if you're in your sympathetic state and your gut's turned off, you're going to be feeling anxious or depressed.
Okay. So how can mindfulness and relaxation techniques help regulate the nervous system's response to stress, and how are you doing this sort of how are you contributing to the reduction in stress?
So mindfulness, and I touched on this, on some of the last questions, and I'm so passionate about this. I'm a yoga teacher, and I've also gone through my own story of burnout. I used to be a paramedic, and I started out as a paramedic, then COVID hit, it all got really crazy. And, it's already stressful finding a job as a paramedic, finishing your degree, and then starting out as a paramedic, doing long shifts, working away from family, seeing and experiencing the things that you do. And I obviously wasn't looking after myself. I thought I was. I was training really hard at the gym. I was looking after my nutrition, I thought. However, I was depleting myself, and I was being so much of a perfectionist in every area of my life, and it led to burnout. And that's when I turned to yoga. That's when I turned to meditation. That's when I turned to mindfulness, was because I needed to change my life. I was 23 years old, and I was told that I'd have to go on hormone replacement therapy if I didn't do something about it now. And I thought at 23 years old, there's no way I'm going to be put on, such a harsh medication when I need to find the root cause. So that's when and I'm going to preach this until the cows come home, is I tapped into my parasympathetic nervous system more, because I was so much in my sympathetic that I just drained my nervous system, drained my physical and mental health, and I needed to replenish. So I found yoga. It wasn't easy, didn't totally enjoy it. And, but, I got there, and now I love it because it makes me feel so connected with myself, and it's allowed me to heal. You're either breaking down something in your body, or you're building and repairing. They're the two. That's sympathetic and that's parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is healing, building, and repairing. And we need to do that. As a high performer, as a busy person in society, imagine if you never took rest or recovery, if you never took time to heal your cells, heal your nervous systems, heal your brain. Your brain is a muscle. It's like anything else. I mean, would you go to the gym every single day and train legs for 6-7 days a week and then expect that your legs are going to feel fine? You're not going to suffer from maybe a muscle tear or an injury or pain. Like, we don't do that. But however, we don't shut down from our brain. Our brain is a muscle that is chewing through so much energy, so much glucose, so much everything, because our brain is the number one thing that we need to keep us alive and to keep us functioning, breathing, moving. So your body will do anything for your brain. But how can we find pockets of parasympathetic? That's what I preach. It's not about meditating for hours. It's not about doing yoga twice a day, because I understand it's not practical. So I don't want people listening thinking, oh, mindfulness, that sounds really great, but how can I find the time? How can you find 3 lots of 5 minutes a day? Because that's only 15 minutes of your day. That is 1% of your 24-hour day. That is it. And if you look at your phone, I'm sure you're spending a lot longer on that, just scrolling on Facebook, creating another stress response within your body as you compare to everyone else. You're watching the news. That's another stress response as you get filled with negativity and negative energy and stressful events that are happening all over the world. Or maybe you're talking to a friend that they're whinging about their day. That's going to cause you to have a stress response. Now, how can you find 15 minutes a day for yourself to come back into your body, to breathe, to focus on something? Find an anchor. That's mindfulness, is focusing on something. Whether you sit with a cup of tea and you focus on how the warm liquid is traveling around the body and it feels to drink that tea, and you smell the tea and you bring the senses into the experience, right? Mindfulness could be just walking, and you focus on each step, and you focus on how the pressure of your feet feel on the floor, the texture. Maybe you have your shoes off, you're walking on the pavement or the sand or the carpet, and you focus on that. You focus on the wind and how it feels on your skin. There's so many ways you can just be mindful. Mindful is about being present and focusing on one thing so we can connect in, slow down, tap into our parasympathetic, and actually heal.
Okay, so you were talking about the gut before. How does the gut-brain axis meditate or mediate the effects of stress on the nervous system? Because I really like to hear about that.
So gut health, if we don't look after it, it causes a stress, or the other way around, like how we can heal our gut and actually help reduce stress. Is that what you mean?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So as I was talking, it is actually super interesting. So recently I did an assignment at uni about serotonin and, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which people are prescribed when they suffer from anxiety and depression. And it talks a lot about the gut. And I feel like, to be honest, that a lot of the time in Western medicine, we forget about some of the important things that basically come back to our foundations. And we try to band-aid affect things, and we try to just push through, and we feel like that's the solution. However, I feel if a lot of people just focus on their gut health, they would feel so much better in their mind. Because like I said, 90 to 95% of our serotonin is produced by the microbiome within our gut. So it's produced within these little cells and released by these little cells that are in the gut. And think about the gut lining, your intestines actually specifically, as little tiny fingers. And it's, all along your intestines, the lining of it. And within that, it's secreting serotonin. However, if we're eating, poor quality food, if we're irritating our gut lining all the time through, triggers like chemicals, food, stress, then we are just clogging up and ruining this sort of gut lining and the intestines, and we're not allowing food to digest properly. We're not allowing our nervous system to move everything that's happening in our digestive system. And it's quite a complex system. Digestive system is our second brain, because it literally has this vagus nerve that travels all the way from the brain down to the gut. It is the biggest nerve in our body. And if we're not activating it, it's not going to be helping our gut microbiome to stay healthy, to produce serotonin. It's going to start shutting down. And if we're eating poor food, then it's going to block, microbiome from actually doing its thing. Microbiome is so important for our immune system, for our mood. Serotonin is the number one hormone neurotransmitter for mood regulation, for us feeling happy, and for us to be able to move through our circadian rhythm, like I explained before, and for us to, regulate our sleep, so many things that it's important for. And imagine if we're not secreting the right levels of serotonin, or our microbiome is out of balance, and because you have what we call, good bacteria and bad bacteria. Imagine if the bad bacteria, if you want to call it, is taking over. It's going to, stop the good bacteria doing its beautiful things that it is doing. And then you're going to be struggling with low sleep, low energy, poor gut health, probably bloating. This is then going to radiate to your back. A lot of people have lower back pain, but a lot of it's gut health problems, headaches, all of the things that's happening in your gut then eventually leak into your blood system, and then your bloodstream. And this eventually leaks up into your brain it actually travels through the blood-brain barrier, which is really crazy. So if you're listening to this and you're suffering from, brain fog, struggling to focus, struggling to think, and you're having gut issues, it's something to really look into. And deep breathing, tapping into your parasympathetic is so important for your gut health and for your serotonin secretion.
Okay, so you've actually sort of started a business called Workplace Performance and Wellbeing Institute. You co-founded it. What was the inspiration behind establishing this?
Oh, I love that question. So I am the co-founder. I'm in business with my beautiful fiance, Jason, and I actually started this business 12 months ago, and then he joined along the business at the beginning of this year. So I created this business because, I've had my own journey with burnout and mental health issues, anxiety, stress. And I thought, okay, I want to help more people. And so I created this business because I believe that people need to be educated. How can we help ourselves if we're, unaware, we don't have the knowledge or the resources or the tools? So that's kind of my mission, is to give people the tools to manage their stress, to avoid burnout, to feel happy and thriving. And then I sort of thought, well, majority of Australians are in the workforce, and we're in the workforce probably longer than ever before, with the rising cost of living and all those sorts of things. And we're also at work for well over a third of our lifetime. We're spending longer and longer at work. Some people are doing 60-hour weeks or more at work. And so how can we make this environment that we're inevitably going to be in for years and years and years more enjoyable? How can we allow this space that we are in with a group of people that we call work, how can we allow this space to help us thrive, help us be healthier, happier? And this will also inevitably help productivity, because imagine if we're really healthy, working really efficiently, our body is so fit and strong, our microbiome's doing what it needs, we're happy, we're collaborating with co-workers, we can focus on the tasks. Of course, we're going to be more productive. So it makes sense for workplaces to also invest in their workers because they care, but then also because they want their organization and company to thrive. So, as a mission as WPWI, we just want to help both the business and the organization, but then also the people, to empower them with the tools so they're happy and thriving. So they're coming home after work and they're able to give their 100% to their family, to their loved ones, their children, and their partner, because, we've seen it, especially in the last 12 months as we work with different people, both one-on-one and in the workplace, and they're depleted, they're struggling, they're overwhelmed, their marriage is breaking down, they're not having the quality time with their children, their work is struggling because they can't focus. And so imagine if I could just help them a little bit and tweak some things and give them some tools, it could just completely change their life. So that's why we do what we do.
Okay. So with that, you've actually sort of established a podcast called the Thriving Workplace Podcast. I've listened to quite a few episodes. I thoroughly recommend you actually check that out. So what was the inspiration with starting that?
Oh, thanks, Michael. Oh, you're so kind. The inspiration for that was the same thing. I thought, how can we reach more people? How can we give more value? Jace, my partner, and I, we're always talking about these sorts of things, and we're always talking to different people, and we thought, well, why can't we bring society and community this amazing value? What's the point of us just hiding these conversations, having them at home? What's the point of us just calling up experts and having these conversations? Let's bring them onto the podcast. So that's kind of the intention, is to bring different experts, different people that have had different experiences, either within their own mental health, their own health, workplaces, or business organizations, whether they're a leader or an employee, bringing experts in leadership, health, all sorts of different things. Let's bring them on the podcast, create this platform where people can go and just have so much value for different areas of their life so they can just ultimately thrive both in the workplace and at home. So that was why we created it.
Sounds fabulous, and I'll put the link in the show notes. Final question before I have to let you go. If you had 30 seconds to give one piece of advice, what would that be?
30 seconds of advice. 30 seconds of advice to your listeners would be, if you're listening to this, take a moment to take a deep breath. Take a moment to step out of your life and just be the observer. We just go on this train and we don't take a moment to stop. So that's my advice, because when we actually slow down and we start to reflect, beautiful things can happen.
Sounds wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Lauren McGee, for joining us from Workplace Performance and Wellbeing Institute. Thank you very much for joining us on the Deep Dive podcast.
Oh, you're so welcome, Michael. Thank you so much for having me on. I hope your listeners get some value.
For more information about the Workplace Performance and Wellbeing Institute, go to wpwi.org or check out our show notes at deepdiveau.net. We'll see you next time.